Hi guys. So this is going to be a little confusing. So I'm going to walk you through it slowly. If you end up with questions, send me emails. That's the best way I can put it. So what I'm going to end up doing this semester, the TVS students and the face-to-face students are going to be doing something slightly different. Okay? So don't contact any of the other students in the classes because they're going to be doing something radically different. It'll be the same subject, but I'm taking a whole radical different approach in order to, through this camera, communicate with you the idea. So what I've done today, you may have seen a Thursday folder was out there for a few hours. I just now took it away. You should not see Thursday's folder. I am going to tweak it a little and repost it with this video. Okay, so there might be a blurb where you don't see Thursday's folder. As a consequence, you see these numbers 1 through 8. Don't worry about those. They do not apply to you. They will not be in the folder. Likewise, the poem The Wanderer, I'm going to take a day off just to explain that to you. That'll be at least a half-hour conversation. Be prepared and take lots of notes. Okay? Likewise, I'm going to go over with you The Wife's Lament. It's another Anglo-Saxon poem. You'll take notes. So tomorrow, look for the first video, which will be explaining. I think I'll start with The Wife's Lament and go from there. Okay? So as far as this video today, I will have this file out there in your folder for Thursday. It's called Riddle, Lament, Apocalyptic Genres. I have summed down these 3 genres into 3 quick and easy charts for you to use. You will need to access these charts in a few days. Probably on Monday, I'll have the project set up for you specifically. So it's going to be, again, different than what the classes are doing here face-to-face. Frankly, in your case, it would be a lot easier doing it in the new way that I'm constructing. Okay, so we left off last semester with the Anglo-Saxon period. That's what Beowulf was. So here, in this document I've opened, I have 3 genres that are a part of the Anglo-Saxon tradition. You have riddle poems, you have poems of lament, and you have apocalyptic poems. These 3 are not the only genres for Anglo-Saxons, but they are the top 3 that I like to use for this course. They produce heavy analytical approaches, and you get to explore for yourself your own values and your own concepts of social concerns. Okay? So, let me put it to you this way. I will go over examples of these 3 genres one by one. So what I mean by that is when I talk about The Wanderer, the poem The Wanderer, I'll explain it in terms of the apocalyptic genre. When I talk about The Wife's Lament, on the other hand, we'll talk about the qualities of how The Wife's Lament matches this lament poem. Okay. Likewise, a riddle poem is the same logic. I'll have a poem that we'll discuss. That'll be an example of a riddle poem. But just for right this second, I'm just going to the 3 genres in general terms right away. So a riddle poem, just concentrate on this right here. The riddle poem is like the modern concept of the riddle. So when like my 10-year-old, he likes to ask riddles. He'll come up to me just on whim and say, "Why did chicken cross the road?" Okay, then he gives me a warped, unusual answer that's totally unexpected. That's a typical modern riddle. What a riddle poem will do, on the other hand, it'll take that simple concept and expand upon it. Riddle poems can be somewhat lengthy. Okay, so these 4 qualities here are the top 4 things to look while you're reading these types of writing. The narration in a riddle poem for the Anglo-Saxons can be 2 choices. You can have first-person narration, or it can be in third-person narration. If it's first-person narration, that means the narrator is presenting himself or herself as an object or as an event personified. And then the reader goes over the material and tries to figure out what the writer is discussing. Okay, there'll be heavy descriptions, heavy metaphors, a lot of kennings. Don't forget the kennings. And the narrator is using the first person tone of voice. A quick example off the top of my head, a very basic example off the top of my head. I am a creature that is round and bald, yet inside I encase a golden soul. Okay? And so then you, as the reader, would say, well, what could that possibly be? And then you go through the concepts in your head, and you go, oh, it's an egg. Okay? That's a riddle poem from a first-person perspective. The third-person perspective is a disembodied voice. Okay? A person not in action with the object of discussion. So you'll have an event or an observation or a description of an object, event, natural situation from a third person standpoint. Okay, so it's the same concept, just reinvented from pronouns. So the other quality, the themes often will fall into confusion, inquiry, curiosity, and are embedded with dream logic. They're not supposed to make immediate sense. You're supposed to sit back and think to yourself, what is the writer getting at with this? You have to rethink the whole concept. Look carefully at the words. Okay, that's why the confusion comes into play. It's not supposed to make sense right away. Again, as I've said already, there are elaborate descriptions, there are heavy metaphors, there are lengthy metaphors. You may have already heard of the element, the literary element of an extended metaphor. That's what a riddle poem does. It takes a metaphor and extends it to the breaking point. And it'll keep talking about different ways this association unknown of this object can be created. So again, number 4, it's easy to see how number 4 comes into play. They're very vague. They're cryptic. Sometimes they will follow a storyline, and that's only to add a little bit of curiosity and confusion into the mix. So you get sidetracked in the story, and then you have to go back and reread it 2 or 3 times to realize where the writer is taking this concept. Okay. So later on in a secondary video, I'll have an example of a riddle poem, and we'll break it down according to these 4 elements. The other genre I'll be showing you later is a lament poem. Okay. These are typically always in first person. And in this case, the reason for it being in first person, you want to have strong sympathy for the character. You want to build, the writer wants to build a connection between the reader and the speaker. As a result, the title says it, lament. When you're lamenting, you are grieving you feel a sense of isolation, or you have experienced a personal loss, or you've been placed in personal exile. All these different themes apply for a lament. Okay, the Bible has some hymns that are lamentations. Okay, so these are, a lament poem is similar to an elegy because sometimes you're talking about the death of a loved one, and you can show the regret of losing connection with a friend. So in that sense, it could be an elegy, but mainly this poem is centered on the living person and their emotional reaction to this loss. Okay, so you're not praising a loved one who has died. You're merely expressing your grief over the loss of that person, and then you focus on your reaction, not on the importance of the person in your life. It is self-centered, okay, but the sympathy is pushed at the reader to connect to this struggling, emotional person, male or female. Now, these, unlike the riddle, a lament will not have a storyline. It's just pure description of a situation. You don't have a backstory. You don't have a resolution. You just have the current emotional state of a character presented in front of you in that grieving moment. These can be ambivalent. These can be ambivalent at times. The poem I'm going to show you is ambivalent. Okay, the wife's lament can be vague, but I'll walk you through that. Finally, apocalyptic. You're familiar with apocalyptic concepts. It's the same as in the Bible. Most people think of the book of Revelations when I say apocalyptic, but don't forget the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, has passages that are apocalyptic in their own construction. This was created by the Hebraic societies that were captured by Babylon back in the 600 BCE. So the book of Isaiah, for example, that's an apocalyptic situation. He's predicting the end times, the destruction of communities, of identity. So because you're talking about destruction, these are first-person accounts. The narrator is letting you know, the prophet is telling you of a chaotic moment in the near future. He or she's experienced a dream or a vision, and they're letting you know the specific details of all they remember from that bad dream. You don't write an apocalyptic poem based on a waking moment. It's all on a dream time. I don't want to say hallucination, but vision that's being put onto the writer. The narrator is providing first-hand account and is seeking followers, seeking disciples, if you will. So oftentimes you have prophets and seers writing apocalyptic texts. Okay, so the themes here are sort of echo from Lamentations. You have grief, lamentations, and like with riddles, you have confusion, chaos, and isolation. So it is easy to confuse an apocalyptic poem with a riddle poem or a lament poem. Okay, so if you have something in front of you and you don't know which of the three you have, talk to me and we'll firm out the questioning. So within the structure of an apocalyptic writing, it is complex. There will be many symbols, and a lot of coded language that the meanings have been lost over time. What's a crucial issue to remember, just like a critic using a lens to analyze material, a translator will use a lens to interpret the material and put it into another language. Okay, so I'll have an example of that problem that'll come out when I explain the wife's lament. But just remember, critics and translators are using lenses in order to produce the work or to interpret the work in question. Finally, an apocalypse, the apocalyptic poems are narratives, and they do use chronology setup. So they'll break events as they occur in real time. So you have day 1, day 2, and day 3. So everything's set up in a parade-like fashion of details. They're very specific in how the climactic destruction of the world will happen. So it'll either by flood, famine, fire, disease, all those top horrific ways of blowing up the world with an asteroid. All these things are how the world will end. These prophets, by gathering their followers and their disciples, are trying to convert people to their way of thinking. And that's another issue to keep in mind. Some of these are political, socially involved. Some of them are merely religious and metaphoric. And that's where you as a reader and as a critic need to decide the realms of where this poem is going. So the example I have for you is called The Wanderer. It's very complex. That's the longest of the 3 examples we'll go through. Okay? So I hope you are being safe. That's it for today. There's no immediate assignment. I'll post that very soon. As it is, I hope you're being safe. Like I said, take care, and I'll talk to you soon.